Mr. Speaker, do you agree with Governor Pritzker that you want federal law enforcement to work with local law enforcement to get rid of criminal illegal aliens?
Let me begin by answering that question with telling you I don't believe anyone is an illegal alien. That's a terrible term to use about anyone.
It's a legal term.
It's not a legal term. They used to call black people slaves legally, and it was wrong. Let's stop dehumanizing people. Let's start treating people right.
That's just some of the floor debates on Halloween morning after a marathon session. They went even longer than that to pass more legislation at the Illinois General Assembly. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, the editor of the Center Square. You can go to the website and get the latest in the newsletter each and every weekday morning, but you can wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Lot to unpack still from the final few hours of legislative session on October 30th, and it spilled over into the morning of October 31st with the the Illinois Senate. I'm personally still recovering from covering all of that. So the Illinois Senate, they had their final vote at about 4:30ish and some parliamentary stuff, and then they got out of there a little after that. But it was 4:30 in the morning before I got out of the Capitol building in Springfield. So some of the things they passed, obviously we've talked about the transit bailouts and the tax increase that could happen with RTA and the sweeping of the road fund interests to pay for RTA. You had the decoupling bill that also passed to decouple the state's tax code from the federal tax code. You have the energy issues that were brought up and the concerns that they're now tacking on $8 billion of cost to the ratepayer to help prop up battery storage for the renewable energy push that Illinois is undertaking by law. But you also had the expansion of the state's migrant sanctuary policies. And this is a bill that Speaker Chris Welch brought forward to essentially, in a way, require certain places to have policies dealing with law enforcement. Here's how the speaker characterized the bill he proposed.
Everyone should feel safe. Not some people. All people should feel safe at our hospitals, which will be required to adopt safeguards concerning law enforcement's presence at healthcare facilities, at courthouses, where those ordered to appear in court for jury duty, a traffic ticket, or other businesses will be protected from extrajudicial abuse and detention. And on our college campuses and daycare centers, which will now adopt policies to protect students and children in their care, including protection against disclosing a family's real or perceived immigration status. In this bill, we're also creating a private right of action to enforce these protections. We're adding teeth to this bill with that private right of action.
Now, when you hear private right of action, that means civil litigation. Private individual can go and sue, say, the university for violating this law, or the daycare center for violating this law, or a law enforcement officer for violating this law. Questions about qualified immunity being brought up. Republican State Representative Patrick Windhorst questioning Welch on this issue.
Our Bivens action is not limited to federal officers. It is limited to, there is no limitation. It applies to any person. So we look at what Bivens does under federal law, and apparently we think that's a good idea to bring it to state law, but we don't put in the same protections that exist with Bivens suits. What will be the consequences by not following that practice? The answer is we don't know. What individuals are going to be subject to civil liability that today we're not even thinking they would be subject to that liability? What violations of constitutional law that we may not even be thinking about today will individuals be subjected to liability for violating? This is too broad and it goes too far. We are attempting through this bill to place restrictions on federal law enforcement officers. We have also placed our state and local law enforcement officers in jeopardy of civil liability. Under our United States Constitution, the federal government is supreme. The ability for us as a state to impose civil liability on federal officers is highly dubious. So when a federal court decides that that portion of this act is unconstitutional, the only people we'll have been exposing to civil liability will be our local and state law enforcement officers, completely defeating what was described as a purpose of this bill. This bill goes too far, it is too broad, and there will be grave consequences to our state if it is.
And ultimately, it does pass. But you can see there, that was from October 31st. And a little bit later on, it was October 31st. No, that was October 30th.
Exposing.
As you can see from the timestamp there. But during John Cabello's comments, it changed over to Halloween.
We have good people in law enforcement that dedicate their lives to the service of others. They're your mothers, your fathers, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles, and your friends. They are white, black, Hispanic, and every other race. They took an oath. The oath is to support the Constitution of the United States of America, first.
The time change coming up.
The state of Illinois, second. And when it comes to it, it's the first part of that oath that takes over.
There's the strike of midnight. So obviously you can see there, they just keep going. They went for another 2 hours in the House discussing not just this legislation, but other bills. But on this bill to require certain places to have policies in place, Democratic State Representative Lillian Jimenez from Chicago addressed why she thinks this is important.
As daycare centers to adopt policies to ensure families are not excluded or discouraged from participating in daycare programs based on their actual or perceived immigration status. We want daycare centers to establish a written plan of action, establish procedures for seeking consent from parents before releasing a child's information, and making sure to formalize late pickup protocols, ensuring children are safely released to designated adults. This bill will not put any additional financial burden on any of these child care providers. This legislation, what it does is give centers clear procedures and protection for children in emergencies.
And Jimenez talked about a couple of emergencies she has experienced herself and some of her colleagues have experienced, and having daycare centers on lockdown because of ICE enforcement on the streets and a variety of other things like tear gas being deployed and such. So the rationale the Democrats pushing to have this become law is just that. They don't like the chaos they see on the streets, but when it comes to that chaos, some people saying it's because there are illegal immigrants in Illinois, and Illinois law prohibits state and local law enforcement from cooperating with federal law enforcement for immigration purposes. Here is C.D. Davidsmeyer, Republican from Murraysville, questioning the speaker on the House floor on Halloween morning.
Mr. Speaker, do you agree with Governor Pritzker that you want federal law enforcement to work with local law enforcement to get rid of criminal illegal aliens?
Let me begin by answering that question with telling you I don't believe anyone is an illegal alien. That's a terrible term to use about anyone.
It's a legal term.
It's not a legal term. They used to call black people slaves legally, and it was wrong. Let's stop dehumanizing people. Let's start treating people right. Language matters. Let's treat people with respect and humanity. And I agree with Governor Pritzker that we should fight like hell to protect people's constitutional rights and their due process rights. Next question.
Okay. Next question. Do you believe or do you agree with Governor Pritzker that local law enforcement should work with federal law enforcement on immigration issues?
I believe, as the original sponsor of the Trust Act in 2017, which was passed by this august body and signed by a Republican governor, that law enforcement should follow the Trust Act.
Other nations have chosen to send some of the worst of the worst. I am not saying that everyone who has come here illegally is a bad person. I don't believe that. But we have laws and we have process. And if anybody should believe in following the laws that are passed by a governmental body, it should be the very people that are right here.
But a bill that ultimately passed the House and also the Senate. It's on its way to the governor's desk. The governor making these comments yesterday saying that they're all looking for how to rein ICE in.
We're all looking for ways to rein in ICE because they're clearly overstepping the bounds of their authority. I think we all understand that. You can see that. Just stand on a street corner and watch them operate. They come in, they aren't following even what the courts are telling them to do. So the question is, how can we rein them in? And there are, as you know, limits because, well, the federal government trumps state law, and they have federal, well, limited immunity, but immunity in the conduct of their job. And so we have relied, by the way, for, well, 100 years or more at least, on the federal government to rein in its own agents, to have supervisors and department heads and the President of the United States suspend people who are breaking the rules or hold them accountable in some way or even fire them. So we expect that normally from the federal government, but this is not a normal moment. And these are not normal times. And we now have a president who doesn't follow the law and who himself is a convicted felon.
So we'll see just where this all lands. Of course, wake up with us each and every weekday morning here for more Illinois in Focus Daily.